Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Freund. I am presenting with Brian Wasserman and Adam Foreman on social media, using your iPad in your legal practice. The Social Media Committee of the FBA. Brian Wassam on the far right is a partner at Honigman. He is the chair of the Social, Mobile, and Emerging Media Practice Group and does a strong IP litigation practice. Adam Foreman, to my right, is a partner at Miller Canfield and is actively involved in his employment litigation practice. We're going to start with use cases. Why would I ever use this thing? Attorneys are used to doing things sort of the way they've always done them, very traditional practice. And when would you use something like an iPad or other device?
Well, Lauren, the short answer is whenever you would use a piece of paper, a legal pad, or your iPhone. But to break that down a little bit, one of my favorite uses and most common uses for using my iPad in my legal practice is to take notes. Literally to write it down as if I would on a piece of paper with a stylus that has a touch-sensitive end on one side of it. That has a lot of benefits that we'll talk about, a lot of upside for organization compared to a number of different pieces of paper and easier to send to other people. I use it for carrying documents, and something we all do. It's a common use for anybody who uses the iPad in the legal practice is a substitute for a banker's box. Literally 2 hours ago, I learned that I was covering a motion tomorrow morning. So what I did was to download the pleadings that I would need for that motion hearing onto my iPad, and I will carry that iPad with me into court tomorrow rather than a manila folder that I would have to then print up and likely throw away at the end of the hearing. That can have enormous benefit, especially in a document-intensive case where you would otherwise be carrying around a large, heavy briefcase, or a deposition in which you'd be handing documents back and forth. A lot easier to do on a small portable device.
Brian, let me interrupt you there for a second. What are some of the challenges that you might have faced while bringing your iPad loaded with documents into the courtroom?
Honestly, I haven't run into the challenges that I would have expected. The first couple times I brought physical backups just in case the security gave me a hard time with the device. Most courts nowadays will let attorneys bring in phones, and so the iPad is not functionally different than that as far as they're concerned. And so I've honestly never had any pushback at all.
I think one of the challenges, though, is to think about how you're getting the content on your device. These tablets, and it doesn't have to be an iPad, it could be any manufacturer that makes a mobile device, allows you to get data or content on it in two ways. One is through local storage, so it will have some degree of memory on it that you can actually store documents on. The other way is to access it from the cloud or from the internet or from your company's server. And if you're accessing it remotely in that fashion, you're always going to have to be cognizant of whether you're going to have any challenges, technologically speaking, from downloading what you need to the device. The worst thing, I think, and you would agree with me, Brian, that you can do when you're presenting with your iPad in front of any forum is to have it not work.
Sure.
The judges are ready, the opposing party is ready, if there's a jury there, they're ready, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're making everyone wait for your technology. So I guess for me, I would prefer, if I was in your situation, to store it on my local device as well. I would not rely on the ability to download it from some third-party source so I could then show it or have access to it.
Absolutely, and that's what I did. I put it in a cloud storage and then downloaded it from that cloud storage to my physical device, so I don't have to worry about a court Wi-Fi signal, which is still rare. And we'll talk about later on in the hour some apps that you can use to make all this happen, what we're talking about.
Excellent. What are some other uses?
Okay, so in addition to those use cases, some obvious ones for legal practice is legal research. And there are plenty of legal apps and research apps and even websites that are optimized for a mobile device. Sitting down and typing out documents or doing the same sort of research that you would do in front of your laptop or desktop computer in the office. There are keyboards and other devices that allow you to use an iPad very much like you would use a laptop computer. The travel use case is an especially useful one for an iPad. So we all know that the security at the airport gives extra scrutiny to laptops. There's a little bit more effort involved in carrying one of those on a plane or train or other transportation situation. Very much easier, and once you do it, you'll appreciate how much easier it is to just pull an iPad out of a pocket or a bag and take that out and start working right away instead of waiting for it to boot up. Don't underestimate the ability to do Skype and other video calls. Maybe it's particular to my practice, but I actually spend quite a bit of time chatting with clients, with other lawyers, people that I am in cooperation with, do business with, over video calls. It's an enormously effective way to communicate. You get a lot more out of it than you would an email communication situation. And the form factor of the iPad is ideal for that sort of interaction. I've even given presentations like this remotely over Skype through my iPad. Showing off your client's technology or accessing your client's technology. These are a couple examples particular to my clients and my practice, but more and more what our clients are doing and the things that we're litigating over happen online, on the internet, and we can access and demonstrate those fact patterns through the device itself. There are situations where you might actually want to show how a technology works in court, in a hearing, in a conference with a judge. I have, in fact, at a status conference, an early scheduling conference, pulled out my iPad, played a video, played some technology right there in front of the judge at the table so we could all see it and appreciate it together. And let's not undervalue just the basic applications that we use when we travel. We're busy litigators, we travel a lot, and when we do, some basic functions as an alarm clock app, communicating with your family back home, again the iPad, the form factor and the apps that are available on it make that a lot easier.
So that's all sounds really good, and I even have some questions about that. You know, one thing that you mentioned is using the documents on your iPad at a deposition. Is that something you've done before?
I have, yeah.
So how do you mark those as exhibits?
Well, we're going to talk about some apps that let you actually manipulate and annotate PDFs. That's the easiest way.
I think the simplest way to think about the use case is exactly what Brian said. Anytime you use a piece of paper. So for folks who have an active litigation practice, the benefits of carrying a device that has everything you need in one place, easily accessible at a touch, should be self-evident. But it's not just that. I've been in pitches for clients where I'm able to show content from my law firm, where I'm able to show examples of other things I've done, and it's all right there. If I need to go in front of a governmental body, and we do work for public sector entities, and we need to explain why we want our fees paid. You sometimes have to go to a council commission. Having a mobile device with you that puts everyone on the same page and puts it in a graphic interface that's comfortable and easily accessible is beneficial. If you're in a smaller environment and you're in a mediation or a facilitation or an arbitration, any of those formats could benefit from having a presentation device. And I think one of the keys is in the scope of things, if you would hire a third-party expert to do these type of things for you, you'd pay an awful lot of money, not only for their devices, but for their time and expertise. This levels the playing field. This makes the ability to give an effective presentation available to anyone, whether they're a sole practitioner, whether they're from a large firm, and everyone and anything in between. So I'm a big fan, and I think it'd probably be helpful to talk about some of the things you want to bring with your mobile device to kind of enhance your ability as a mobile road warrior.
Yeah.
You can say that?
Some accessories for your tablet.
So one of the first things you need to be thinking about is whether you're going to need access to the internet, whether that's for your email, for your calendared items, or to download documents from a third-party repository, which we'll talk about in a moment. A lot of devices come in connected. They have the ability to connect to the internet. They can do it one of two ways primarily. They'll have built-in an antenna which will attach to a Wi-Fi, but as Brian said, they're not always available in courts. They're not necessarily reliable. And since we are talking to lawyers here, there are ethical implications of attaching a device with attorney-client privileged communication to a public network that could be accessible to everyone. Okay, so another way you can do it is to have your own ability to connect, and we have for you some examples up there of ways you can get connected. They're not the only ones. All the mobile carriers provide mobile hotspot devices for a very low cost. You can either buy a device or get service, sometimes on a monthly basis, sometimes as an ad-need basis, that will let you attach to the internet to get what you need. A lot of phones, too, will come with a mobile hotspot feature, which means if you have your computer with you or your laptop, or excuse me, your tablet, and the tablet doesn't have connectivity to a cellular provider, you can use the cell data plan from your mobile device to send it to your tablet. Sometimes there's a fee, but again, when you think about the cost and the scope of what you're doing, it's pretty reasonable. Inputting on devices.
If I could,
yeah,
if I could jump
please.
in on that one, Adam. You know, we have listed here using your phone as a hotspot too. You know, the hotspots used to come and are still available in these separate standalone devices, but more and more, depending on your carrier, some carriers are more generous about this than others in the data plan that you may pay for. But I know with my AT&T iPhone, it has the built-in ability to act as a hotspot. I turn it on, and my other devices that I have, including my iPad, can connect to that wirelessly and go right through there.
Now, a lot of times I hear people complain about the displeasure of inputting data on their device because it's a glass screen. Any of these tablets are glass screens, and for some it's an awkward feeling to enter information that way. But as Brian pointed out earlier in his use cases, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of alternative ways to get content on. When you think about the various forms of keyboards available, there's everything from manufactured keyboards that will cost around $100 all the way down to third-party knockoffs that can be as inexpensive as $20. There are keyboards that are built into cases, and I see a lot of the folks in the audience have those as well. It's all personal preference. Do you like chocolate ice cream better, or do you like vanilla? I like to use a Bluetooth portable keyboard, $20 on Amazon. The reason I like it is because I find that I use my iPad as much or more for consuming as creating content, and I don't want to carry a keyboard around with me all the time. If I was going to do that, I would just bring a laptop. But there are times where I do need to type quite a bit, and having a portable Bluetooth device is important to me. And then you think of what your priorities are. I know that because I don't use it on a daily basis, having a keyboard that would require plugging in to charge a battery isn't going to work for me, because I'll go days without using my keyboard. I would much prefer alkaline batteries that I can buy at any airport, any hotel, any store, so that if my batteries go bad, I either have spares or can get them. So I've chosen a battery-powered one, and I've often also chose one that has a physical on-off button. It's a problem I had with my old Bluetooth keyboard. It didn't have an on-off button. It went to sleep. Well, oftentimes it would not really be sleeping. It would be on in my backpack, my briefcase all night, and when I needed it the next morning, it wasn't available. So I certainly would encourage you to consider a keyboard. Lots of options out there.
Yeah, if I can chime in, as long as we're talking preferences, frankly, my preference is to use the on-screen keyboard. I try to keep my accessories to a minimum, and I find that typing on the screen is something I've gotten used to and doesn't bother me. If I'm going to do hardcore document authoring, I still default to a laptop. You know, we're not here to tell you that the iPad is the end-all, be-all for every possible situation. But if I were going to get a keyboard, and sometimes I'm tempted to, I would get one that folds into a case, because I always carry mine in a case, and so it would be more convenient form factor that way.
The next thing you want to talk about is something Brian also alluded to a little bit ago, and that's a styli or stylus. There's lots on the market. They started off with a special rubberized tip for a captive input, which means when you write, it sort of kind of follows what you did, but it's not the most precise. We're long past 2010 now. In 2014, we're into the second and third generation of styli, and they are very precise. Many of them now will connect via Bluetooth to your tablet device and will allow for far more precise input with your stylus to your device. And of course, the more bells and whistles that stylus has, the more expensive it'll be. So they can go up to $100. They can be as inexpensive as $2. I'll tell you, for my money, Brian, the best input stylus device I've seen is on the Microsoft Surface. It's amazing how lifelike that is to actually writing with the pressure sensitivity and the thickness and the thinness of the lines.
And that's something to understand, though, the way your device works. The Surface, which is an iPad alternative, actually, as Adam says, will detect the pressure. It's actually designed to be written on with a stylus that's meant to be used for that device. So it doesn't necessarily need the capacitive substance here that approximates your finger. What this substance here is meant to do is have the same conductivity as your finger, so that you're basically tricking your iPad into thinking you're writing with your finger, because that's what the iPad is designed to do. iPad isn't designed natively to accept stylus input. Steve Jobs famously said yuck when he was shown a stylus. He hated them. I think he was wrong, and I still like to use those. But as Adam said, there are some now that are so precise and so specific and Bluetooth enabled and everything, and some of them are designed to work specifically with apps. So there's the Jot. Their most recent version is designed specifically to work with Evernote, which is an app that we're going to talk about. But you're right, my favorite is the cheaper one. Actually, the ones that I get the most use out of are the ones I get as free swag from clients or conferences. I don't care whose logo is on it. What I care about is that it has both the capacitive touch and an actual ballpoint pen. So it's 2 for 1. Like I said, I like to keep my accessories to a minimum.
So I also like, Jot would be my favorite. I've been using the Jot that is got a lithium-ion battery in it, and it is far more precise. It's the 2nd generation. But if I'm not using that, I agree with Brian. I like the 2 for 1. I actually like a 3 for 1. I have one that has a laser pointer, a ballpoint pen, and the nib on the end. Because I don't think Brian or I would tell you that you need to throw away everything that's worked for you before. I mean, at least from my perspective, I view the tablet as another tool in your toolbox, and you use it like any tool. You use it where it's most efficient and effective, but if what you're using already works for you, there's not a whole lot of reason to change it. So you try to work it into things that already work.
And not to mention, I was stuck in court one time with just a stylus and not a pen, and I had to fill out a piece of paper order, and so I'm not going to do that again.
So what are some of the reasons you'd use a stylus with your tablet? I mean, we all understand why you'd use a keyboard, of course, but what is it that you'd actually use a stylus
So for me, it's like Brian, I would take notes. When I walk into a meeting, if I'm at a status conference in the court, I'll often take notes with the stylus, and then using the apps, which we'll get to in a moment, I'm able to remotely send that to my office, have it saved on my system, and I don't have to worry about it anymore.
So just a preference over typing the notes?
Sure.
Use the stylus.
When I'm typing, I'm sometimes looking down and I'm not paying attention, or I'm getting caught up with typographical mistakes. When I'm writing, I can sit and I can look at the person with whom I'm speaking, and it feels much more natural to me. The technology falls out of the way.
Yeah, exactly like you would use a notepad, a legal pad. I can only type with 2 fingers. If I could type with all 10, it might be a different story.
I don't think there's a lot to say about cases. Cases are very personal. Like we said, there's some cases that have built-in keyboards. There are some cases that approximate titanium armor so that if you drop your device, it's protected. I prefer a case that's very slim and it's just a skin on my device. I like to carry it in my briefcase and I don't want to carry a lot of extra weight.
Yeah, whereas I prefer the Hex. This is just a brand that I like. The front is like a moleskin notebook, so it has that feel to it. You open it up, you've got your stylus. You can have a wipe, which is always a necessity for a touch screen. Refold it again, and you've got something that stays in place, and the screen is available to use. That's just my personal preference.
You want to think about how you're going to present to your audience. And there's lots of the traditional wired options available. Right now, we happen to be using a wired option. We're using a traditional VGA cord, and those are fine in terms of plugging them into your mobile device, and we can talk about it. But there's a whole slew of wireless products on the market, too, that are really top-notch, depending on what you need. One that's popular is the Apple TV option. It's about the size of a hockey puck. It retails for $100, and what it does is plugs into either a projector or, more appropriately, a screen, like an HD TV screen, and you can connect it using Bluetooth from your, or AirPlay is what the Apple proprietary product would be, and stream from your device right to the display. The advantage is you're not worried about wires, you're not worried about relying on unreliable Wi-Fi. If you're in a hotel, for example, that's notoriously unreliable. And then, Brian, I know you're a fan of the Chrome, right?
I like the Chromecast, yeah. It's cheaper. This retails for about $35 as opposed to $100 for an Apple device, and it's made by Google, so it's designed to work with YouTube and other Google-approved devices. Some that are made specifically to work with Chrome, some that added that feature on. But that really is a function, I think, of the apps you use and the environment you use them in. And I was in a client's office 2 weeks ago where they use Apple TV throughout the office, and every laptop, every iPad that they walk around with, they can instantly connect to any screen in any room they walk into.
Yeah, the whole idea, again, is to let the technology serve as an effective tool, but get out of your way. I think wireless is an important component of that. So we've talked about ways you can get the data onto a screen wirelessly, but there's also projector options that are available. It wasn't too long ago where we had projectors as large as those white ones on the screen. They didn't really put out a lot of quality picture called lumens. And in fact, it was 10 to 50 lumens, and they were somewhat heavy and cumbersome. The technology has taken quantum leaps. What you see up there is called the Vivitech Kwame Q5. That's putting out 500 lumens, so it's at 720p. So your old 5-year-old HD TV is probably 720p. Your new is 1080p. The latest and greatest is 4K. But to give you a sense of the size, I brought mine. Mine's now 3 years old. But you can just put it in your briefcase. It works great in a boardroom, not so great in a big courtroom. Again, you got to think about where you're going to be. But that's it. It's 1 pound. It's easy to carry, and it'll put a pretty reasonable size picture up on the wall. Very easy to connect to your iPad with a cord. The new ones will connect wirelessly. And something, again, seems like $600 is a lot of money. That's the suggested manufactured retail price. They really retail for around $300. And when you think about what your billable hour is, when you think about what you'd pay to rent a projector and have someone run it, to walk into any environment where you're making a presentation and pull out your iPad, pull out a projector, and just go, it looks impressive.
And Adam, do you connect with that wirelessly or through a wire?
So this is an old one and this is a wire. And what I use this for in my practice is I do a lot of labor arbitrations, and I find that when it's just the arbitrator and the two parties in the room, it's a conference size room which can accommodate it. And for me, I do a combination in that setting. So I'll still have a paper copy of the exhibit for the record, but I have everyone looking on the screen as I go through my witness examination. I like it for lots of reasons. First, everyone looking at the same thing together. Second, I like it because inevitably, I want to focus the arbitrator or the witness on a specific line, on a specific page of a document. And since I'm controlling what's on the screen, I avoid well, let my client read the whole thing after I've already marked it up. And I typically lose the surprise when I do that. This way, I keep the surprise. So I like it.
Just remember, if you're going to bring that into the federal courthouse, to get an order first.
Right. Okay. We've talked about video, we've talked about streaming data, but you also have to be conscious of audio. A lot of presentations that you may be doing, again, whether it's in an advocacy setting or otherwise, may require audio. This is the place where it's the least cost prohibitive to get involved. They have made these mobile Bluetooth battery-powered speakers that could fill a room as big as the room we're in 115 here at the courthouse. I use the Bluetooth SoundLink. It's £1.50. It actually is in my briefcase at all times. It's got an incredible sound, very light, very compact, and if I need to do a presentation where sound is important, this could easily fill the room. Just connects via Bluetooth, so I don't have to worry again about Wi-Fi or having cords. The Ounce is nice too, and it's like $40.
I actually use one that's literally the size and shape of a hockey puck. It's also made by Bose, I believe it is, and they have a great sound. They give them away for free now for supporting NPR, doing things like that. You can get these incredibly cheap.
Yeah. Depending on what kind of device you have, you may need something called a dongle to connect something to your device. A dongle, I'm showing everyone a dongle here, is something that plugs into the device and allows a periphery to attach. So in this case, this dongle plugs into my iPad. It's the lightning connector or 8-pin connector on one end, and the other end is an input for a VGA cord. So I find that some conference places I would go to, or some courtrooms or things, do have HDMI, but almost everyone's still gonna have VGA. So I usually carry both with me at all times. So in my briefcase, I'll have a VGA dongle, and then I'll have a similar dongle for HDMI. They're light, they're small, they cost 20 or 30 bucks, and they just work. You don't need to have any programs, you don't have to do anything. You just plug it into your iPad, plug the VGA cord in, and as long as the projector's on, it works. And hopefully, time permitting, we'll be able to show a couple demos, and I'll show you how easy it is to just plug it in and run something right off your iPad using a dongle. Okay. One of the things you're always going to want to be thinking about if you're on the road and you're going to be mobile doing a presentation is, do you have enough power, right? We all have our phones and our mobile devices like our tablets that are power hungry things, and you don't want to be in the middle of a presentation and be worrying about not having enough power. Fortunately, there's hundreds of devices out there that mobilely will give you extra battery power, anywhere from charging your phone up 50% capacity to charging your computer up twice over, depending on the size of the external battery you bought. We brought some examples with you to kind of show you the different flavors that are out there, but they range anywhere from $10 to $50, depending on what you want. And they are also very common swag at conferences nowadays with lots of companies' products on there.
So how do you keep all this organized? I mean, this is a lot to stick in your briefcase, isn't it?
So one of my next slides is something I use. This is called the Grid-It. Slides really smooth into a pocket on in my briefcase. And you can see all the wires are in little rubber bands, and you just kind of fit whatever peripheries you want in there. And it keeps them really solid in one place, and I don't have to worry about losing them. Up top, this big thing is my larger battery. The reason I like this battery is it will completely charge my iPad and my iPhone, and it has 5 inputs for USB cords. So I can be everyone's friend at the airport if people are being rude and sitting in those seats and not charging while they're sitting in those seats. They also have, you want to show them the lipstick size ones?
Yeah, sure. So this, speaking of swag, I got a Grid-It for free at an ABA conference. I got one of these free. This is branded by Intel. I'm not sure which conference that came from, but this you'll recognize as something you can plug into your cigarette lighter to the extent that cars still have these, so you can plug that in. It's USBs that you can charge while you're driving your rental car. And this is called the Jackery, was one of the options on the previous slide here, but this you can actually find really good deals on Amazon, which is where I got it. Plugs one side into here, the other into your device, and it stores, it's a portable battery. You charge this up and then you bring it, tap it when you need it. But there's so many different choices.
I would actually argue, out of all the things we've talked about, the lipstick size extra battery is a necessity. I would never leave without one of those.
Probably on a top 5 list.
Never can have enough power.
So we've sort of covered the hardware here. What about the software?
Okay, so we get asked a lot, I'm sure Brian and I, what apps do you like? And when these mobile devices first came out, it became pretty easy because there really weren't a lot of choices. Now, the developers that make these optimized apps for a tablet device are so plentiful that we are getting to the point of personal preference. I mean, it's Coke or Pepsi. What do you enjoy more? So what we thought we'd do is give you some categories of apps that you should really consider having on your tablet device. We're going to identify a couple we like, but they're not the best. They're not the end-all, be-all. They're just ones that we happen to be comfortable with.
And we'll also throw out a few that maybe we don't necessarily use, but we know that are popular in the field.
One of the things you see on your screen in front of you as a good starting place is to go on your mobile device, whether you're using a Google device and you're going to the Google Play Store, whether you're going to a Windows device or whether you're using an Apple device, go to the store or the place where you can download apps and look at one of their top charts. You know, you need to be a little careful because the top charts are not always the best. I mean, sometimes it's self-perpetuating. People keep on downloading them and they stay on the top. But oftentimes they're top for a reason. It's because they're the most popular and because the price of admission is so de minimis. We're talking anywhere from $4 to free. It's worth trying a few of them because, again, we're talking about your profession. And if there's 3 different apps you can use for taking notes, buy all three, play around with them, see the features, see what's more conducive to your day-to-day activities. It's inexpensive to do, and it's certainly worth it.
Yeah, and especially with the note-taking apps, I found that I probably bought half a dozen before I settled on the one that I knew I liked best, and that's just because it works in a particular way, it's organized in a particular way that works for me.
All right, let's talk about the first category. Want to hit those?
So yeah, so this is the softball. These are things that you're going to want to have on any device, your phone, your iPad, anything else. Basic utilities, I mean, most things like a calculator come pre-installed, but if it's not, or if you want a few extra bells and whistles, I mean, how many times have you randomly had to pull out a calculator or open one on your phone or your laptop just to add up a number in the middle of a negotiation or writing a letter, any number of situations.
Figure out what 1/3 a certain number is.
Exactly. Chrome, it's one of the many browsers that are out there, but I use this exclusively as opposed to the Safari browser that comes pre-installed on your iPad. One of the reasons I like Chrome, which is a Google product, is that it automatically syncs your bookmarks between all your devices. So if I bookmark something on my laptop, which I do pretty often because there are certain sites that I go to regularly in the course of my practice, I know that if I pull out my iPad, open up the internet on there, the same bookmarks are going to be there in the same places. So that makes it easy.
You know, that's actually a feature that's available on Firefox as well. The Mozilla's Firefox, it will do that. And now with iOS 8.1, the newest operating system from Apple, they have a service they call Handshake. And it's supposed to do it as well with your Safari and your Apple computer. I don't own that, but I understand that it's going to do it as well.
Well, Chrome does it natively. It's just the one that I prefer. Feedly is there as an example of a news reader. I used to use Google Reader for this. A lot of people did until Google decided to just kill it for no particular reason. And so now a lot of people that were using that will now use Feedly or a couple other devices. What this does is it collects RSS news feeds, if you're familiar with that. They're basically the updates to all the different sites that you would go to, like a blog or a news source that regularly updates its content, and it will aggregate that content in one place. For me, this has taken the place of the magazine that circulates around your law office that has a little check off there to make sure that everybody in the office reads it. By the time it gets to you, the magazine is out a month old and the information that's in it is 2 months old. It's not an efficient way to keep informed on legal developments anymore. For me, I open up Feedly once a day, once every couple days, very quickly breeze through the headlines, read what I know I want to read, and then move on. In this category, there are also different apps for magazines that you might subscribe to. Just about everyone has its own iPad app customized for that device. Sometimes it's easier to read that than it is the print magazine. It's certainly easier to carry. So this just lets you know this is an information device. It's connected to the internet, so use the internet on it.
Right, and these aggregate news readers are coming in all varieties now. One of the more popular ones is called Flipboard. Flipboard does two things. It will pull RSS feeds, so you type in your interest, Detroit News, Detroit Free Press. It'll pull in a magazine format those headlines, which, as Brian said, you can skim and do a deeper dive if you want to. It will also pull from your social media feeds. So if you type into your Flipboard, your Twitter feed or your Facebook, it will give you those updates, all with a touch where you can just kind of flip through them and kind of skim. So it's in a way that you can stay on top of current events very quickly without having to search for things that are interesting to you.
I like Flipboard. It's more graphical, like Adam suggests, whereas Feedly is more text and headline oriented. Again, personal preference.
I use Zeit because again, look on the top charts, do a search on a web search engine, whether you use Bing or Google or whatever you're using, and put in top apps for, and they're always making lists and updating lists, and try them. A lot of them are free. I think the next thing we wanted to alert you to was the fact that these devices have very robust Office Suite applications available. A lot of people I'll see at meetings with their tablet, and they'll be typing on that app that comes pre-installed called Notes. And I say, why are you typing notes on notes? Well, how else am I supposed to type? And I'm like, why don't you use Microsoft Word? Oh, Microsoft Word's available? Yeah. There are several different apps you can use for Office Suites. Google puts its entire suite of Office apps available for the tablets, but the other big boys do as well. Apple has its own Office suites, which are now free for new devices, have been for a year. Pages is their version of Microsoft Word. Keynote is their version of Microsoft PowerPoint. And Numbers is their version of Microsoft Excel. The only little distinction for the Microsoft products is if you're on an Apple device, they're free to download and free for purposes of consuming content. But if you want to create content on these devices, you need to have a Microsoft license. And there's different licenses available at different price points.
Yeah, I still, like I said, you default to the laptop for Word, not because the Word version of iPad isn't useful, and you can use it in certain situations, but I like to have the connectivity to my Office document management system as well.
One of the things I think is also important to consider having on your mobile device is some sort of app that really leverages the camera function that's on your tablet or your phone. There's all sorts of apps out there that will mimic scanner functions, and they'll do anything from scan a single document to scanning multiple pages at a time and making them into one PDF document to having, I'm going to get it wrong, OCR or OCR capabilities, which will allow you to search and edit a scanned document. The one in the middle you see up there called Genius Scan is a scanner. I actually use that on my mobile phone, and the reason I use that is when I travel and I get a receipt from the taxi or from eating, I immediately scan that receipt, send it via email to my administrative assistant who makes sure to keep a list of it for my check recs, and then I don't have to worry about losing my paper or not making sure I got all my expenses in. So for me, it's a great solution.
Yeah. So whiteboard apps are exactly what they sound like. In the situation where you might doodle something on a whiteboard or brainstorm with others, or just need to not type something in words, but to draw a picture to show something or to convey an idea, that's what these apps are designed to do. So they work primarily with finger input, but style work as well. And these are a few of the more popular options, but there are literally hundreds to choose from.
It's amazing because I first downloaded Doodle simply, and the iBlackboard simply for my children to play with. And then I found that when I was trying to explain a concept, whether it was to a client or to a colleague, the ability to just pull this out, like you said, like a piece of paper and jot down a doodle with your finger, even if something as simple as an org chart, it's amazing how effective it is. So I agree, don't minimize the importance of these whiteboards. Most of them are free, and if not, they're $1, and they're very powerful.
So remote access is exactly what it sounds like. I've mentioned a couple times now some reasons why laptops still have an edge in connecting to the back end, what you have back at the office. These are apps that are designed to allow that functionality on your iPad. The one of these that I've used in the past, still have installed on mine, is Citrix, because my firm supports that. I've found that the iPad Citrix app, at least in my experience, is still a bit slow and buggy. Occasionally it will work well, and in a pinch, and it does work. It's a handy thing to have to be able to fall back on, but none of them really impressed me. How about you, Adam?
Well, for about a year now, we've been using a product made by VMware, and we've had a lot of success with it. It's available on a mobile phone and on a tablet. I don't like the mobile phone. A Windows environment on a mobile device with a touch, it's just too small for your finger to double click something imitating a mouse. But I find my tablet is just the right sweet spot. So a lot of our documents now at our firm are kept in a document management system, and they're not otherwise available. So my ability to go use VMware, log on, create a virtual connection to my firm and pull those documents has been indispensable. And then some of you may know, if you've ever logged on just from a laptop or your home computer, you often need some encryption or stored number that you put in. Well, now those are all available in apps. So RSA is one of the most popular encryption or password keys. And we have ours on an app now. We don't use those dongles on a keychain. What about you guys?
Yeah, ours is on an app as well. I haven't invested a lot of time in it personally because for me, the way I prefer to interact with my documents, that hasn't been a priority, but I know it's available.
And again, remember, this area we're talking about is very much on the radar of Avast and the other big malpractice carriers. And it's a little outside of the scope of what we're talking about today, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't point out, more and more the spotlight is shining on attorneys and their obligations to either understand basic technology or to make sure that they're securing their clients' confidences. And having things like encryption when you're accessing your documents, making sure you're not putting attorney-client information in the cloud on a third-party app.
Like
which
on
we'll talk-
Dropbox
Well, yeah,
or
we'll talk about those in a moment.
Yep.
You need to be really aware of that. And I think that's only going to be more going forward. So I do quite a few presentations with my iPad, and there's great progress in this space from developers to present. One of the ones I'm hoping we'll be able to show you is an app called TrialPad. TrialPad is like Summation or Trial Director or any of these fancy apps you've seen on computers in courtrooms, but in an app world, it's actually quite expensive. But in the scope of software, it's cheap. It retails for about $80. So you may say, well, my apps are free, or $1, 80 is high. But when you think about a tool that does as much as this does, it's pennies. And what it does is it allows you to download all the documents you would need in a trial using your fingers and zooming and pinching on a tablet. You can call out key parts, you can circle key parts, you can highlight them, you can have a set of hot docs available that you need. It's great for your summation, for your closing where the technology is allowed. If your courtroom doesn't object to using the technology for an opening, it's good too to kind of lay out the key players, the key issues, things that you would otherwise do using these apps. If the $80 scares you, there are less expensive options that are not as feature rich. Exhibit A, I think, is $5 or $10, and it works, and it's like a virtual briefcase with virtual folders in it, but not as robust. Teleprompt is great for closings. You put your iPad in the portrait mode, and it will put your closing there, and it'll kind of automatically go just like a teleprompter. So you kind of put it off the sides. You can look at your decision makers, whether it's a judge or jury or arbitrator, and you can present while having a teleprompter just off to the side. So great stuff. You want to talk about Prezi?
Yeah, so my favorite presentation app by far is the one that we've been demonstrating to you for the entire hour, which is Prezi. That's how we put together the visuals that you're seeing here on the screen. I don't have to explain to you the advantage of it or how it looks because you're seeing it. It's when I first saw it used at a presentation about 4 years ago, I said, PowerPoint is dead to me. I will never now use a series of advancing rectangles when you can zoom in and twist and turn as much as you'd like. So this is another one that I credit this tip to a mediator that I recently consulted with and who is training me on the 40-hour training. And you're going to get one of the handouts that we'll have for you at the end of the hour is from him. His name's Shel Stark. Many of you are probably familiar with him, but he recently posted a blog article on 16 ways to use your iPad in mediation, and he's given us permission to reproduce that post for you today. But he suggested to me this app called Picture It Settled. And what it does is it's useful in a negotiating setting, in a mediation setting where you type in the starting positions of each party and each offer and counter offer back and forth, and it'll graphically track for you how much of a movement each offer is, what percentage it moves, and it give you suggestions on what would be a valid counter offer. And if you've been in that situation, you know that sometimes you struggle to come up with an objective basis or an explanation for how far your client is willing to move. And if this gives you that, then it can definitely give you a leg up.
So we talked a lot about note-taking apps, and those are under the business category in the iTunes store if you want to see the top ones. Typically the top 5 is penultimate. They have very active and robust developers who are always trying to tweak any bugs in the app and to add more functionality, to support more types of styli, and to add more features like the ability to add in voice comments or notations in the middle of what you're writing on. So that's one of the more popular ones. I like Notability. It's a personal preference. I find that I'm a bit of a lazy writer, so my hand always rests on the surface on which I'm writing. And some have better wrist protection guards that won't sense that as a input. So for me, the most important feature for me is to have the wrist protection. I think Notability does a good job. Notes Plus or Note Shelf does a good job with that as well. But you just got to look for the features that are most important to you. What do you think is most important?
And I completely agree on that, Adam. You'll know in the iOS setup, you have certain apps that are along the bottom here, and you can customize which those are. Typically, they're the most important apps for you and the ones that you use most often. And right here on my bottom screen are two of these apps, Notability and Evernote. To me, they are in my top 5. If I was stuck on a desert island and can only bring 5 apps, these would be 2 of them. Notability, I agree. I like it for the wrist protection. It's easy to manage that as you write. Avoids mistaken marks on the page, makes it more efficient to input. I also like the way that it organizes your different files. So along the left-hand side of the screen, I have each one of my matters. And I can open that up, and then within that are each one of the individual notes that I've entered within that. Penultimate is set up a different way, in a more artistic, graphical way, where the notebooks look like actual notebooks, and they're not subdivided the way that Notability is. For me, that's much more functional. If I were, when I started my practice, I was using notepads to keep these notes, and I would have a different legal pad and multiple legal pads oftentimes for each case, and they would have, I can transfer that organizational structure into Notability easily, and it serves the same function for me. Evernote is a cloud-based note-taking system, and this it actually works with Penultimate to input its handwritten notes. Penultimate works with Evernote to pump right into that. But Evernote itself is primarily a typing-based input, but it's just great for organizing random notes. For clips from a website, you can just get a little addition to your browser. Again, another reason why I like Chrome, because that works very, very efficiently in that setting. And say, clip this to my Evernote and put a couple tags on it so you can find it later. I find that I store a lot of my legal research, different types of writing, articles that I've written or read, store them all in Evernote. There's no top end on the storage. That you can put as much data as you want into your Evernote account. It syncs to all your different devices. So I actually use Evernote on a daily basis for keeping track of my billable time, because I know that whatever setting I'm in, whether I have my iPad, my iPhone, or my desktop in front of me, because it'll work. It's agnostic to platform. It works on Windows devices as well. I know that it's right there and open. I can pop it open. It will have updated my most recent entry, and I can keep going. So that to me has enormous functionality, and the more data that I've accumulated inside of Evernote over the years, the more useful it's gotten to me. I actually use Notability for my handwritten notes, though, specifically because it doesn't automatically store to the cloud. You have that option. You can always back up anything you want to the cloud, but I set mine so that it doesn't. The reason being, what Adam has already warned us about, is client confidentiality. Evernote takes some great precautions to secure your information. To my knowledge, the actual text of Evernote files hasn't ever yet been hacked, but with any cloud-based system, it's only a matter of time. Notability, those files stay resident on my iPad and only get backed up when I choose to back them up to another physical device. So that way I can kind of police myself to keep client confidences out of the cloud.
So we're running a little short on time. We want to quickly run through some of the transcript, document, and annotation applications available for you. Brian's told you what would be on his Deserted Island top 5. I got to tell you, for me, Goodreader is going to be there. Goodreader is by far my favorite PDF app. PDF Expert is very popular. Lots of people like it. Goodreader is an app that lets you load all sorts of docs, whatever format they're in. They could be Excel spreadsheet, they could be Microsoft Word or PDF. Very simple to create folders and subfolders. I love using Goodreader for oral argument, particularly appellate oral argument. So instead of bringing in 3 or 4 big binders, you've got a folder set up for that oral argument where you've got your notes for oral argument. You've got, at least for me, I've got my folder for key cases that I've already highlighted on Goodreader with my finger, the key parts, and record citation. And if any of the judges have a question or they want to confirm something, it's very simple for me with just my device to go up there and say, well, Your Honor, it was actually in Jones versus Smith, and if you take a look at page 50 that we cited in our brief, and there it is. Whereas my opposition might walk in with this huge 3-ring binder. I know it's here, wait a minute, Your Honor, let me look, and they're fumbling around. And I'm not gonna suggest that a judge is gonna make a decision based on who can get the information quicker. But what I will suggest is that our job is to advocate and is to persuade. And if you have that information available and you're ready and you're correct, it only can help add to your credibility.
Yeah, you streamline it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And good reader would be number 3 in my desert island list.
Well, our
I'm-
firm uses that as well. Our appellate attorney at our firm is a good reader fanatic and sings its praises as
The
well.
one thing, we've talked about third-party storage a lot, and here's a slide where we actually identify 2 of the more popular third-party storage apps, Box and Dropbox. They're great for what they do. They have free accounts and different minimum size storage for free, and then for a fee, you can upgrade the amount you can store. I'm nervous of these. I'm nervous of these as an attorney, primarily for the reasons I've been saying. If you've actually bothered to read the terms and conditions of usage, you'll see that even if you delete something from your Dropbox, it still resides on their server for 30 to 60 days. They have every right to go in it. I remember once I was literally moving a bunch of content from my Dropbox to my box for unrelated reasons. I got a phone call. What? How do you know that? Well, we just want to make sure everything is okay. That's odd to me. Now, they probably just registered, an email. It probably just registered that a lot of data was moved and they wanted to follow up, but that demonstrates to me that they are looking and they're watching and they know. And when it comes to attorney-client obligations, you need to be aware of it. Now, on the other hand, a presentation like this Prezi presentation, it's the most effective way to get it on your tablet. You put something that's not privileged in there, or to work collaboratively with other people across the globe. You can share a folder, you can share a document within a folder. They don't even need to have an account. They can just download it, access it, use it. So for that, it's great. But I just be careful with privileged information.
I agree.
The world of legal research has completely changed. Westlaw and Lexis still have apps, and you can still do all the things you would do on your tablet with those devices. But as Brian said, the ability to do research for low or no cost has changed completely. One of the more popular apps I'll highlight for you is Fastcase. It's free. It's not as robust in its search as a Westlaw or a Lexis would be. But if you're in a situation where maybe you've got a flat fee arrangement with one of the big providers to have just Michigan cases, and you happen to need to know the primary case for a given principal in Alabama, so you need an Alabama state court case, Fastcase is your answer because it will give you the key cases. And if you understand the concept, it's pretty easy to find.
Yeah. The one on here I would highlight is MI Courts, Michigan Courts. Contains all the rules and relevant statutes for both state and federal courts.
There's an app called The Deponent that you can use for trial examination, and what it allows you to do is to have all your exhibits in one place. These are the apps we were telling you about that allow you to mark. Time is going to prohibit us to tell too much about them, but again, think about how you take a deposition now and how they're being transcribed. All this can happen in real time on your tablet device. You can cut and paste testimony you need to put it into a brief, to have it ready for an exhibit if you want to just call it up. A lot of these apps work with one another, so they allow third parties to play nice with one another, so you can pull stuff from one app and put it into another, like Evernote.
Adam, have you used these?
So I have not used a jury selection or observation app yet, but they're just ways of organizing your voir dire process or your jury selection process. So they're robust apps that allow you to populate them with data from all the things you'd get in your jury questionnaires to sitting there in voir dire and identifying who you want to mimicking functions that a jury consultant might in a high stakes piece of litigation when he or she is sitting in the audience kind of keeping track of jurors. It'll have little graphic images of a jury box and you touch on a head and you can start writing down notes. And again, if that's what you think is important for advocating your case, it's something that's available on your mobile device.
Yeah. And this is just a notation to remember there are apps for everything nowadays, including the conferences that you attend. Nowadays, probably 50% of the conferences that I attend during the year have their own bespoke app that you just download, whether it's on your phone or your iPad, has all the handouts in it, the schedule, everything that you'd normally get in a packet once you register. Eventbrite is a common third-party system where local seminars or events will happen, and you buy your tickets through them, and when you do that, you use their app to carry the tickets around with you so you don't have to print those out. All right, so we
Good
wouldn't...
stuff.
Okay, like that. So we'd be remiss if we didn't end with a forward-looking note. Like we say, this technology advances so fast that a lot of these apps, might be obsolete or changed 6 months from now. So we'd like to look ahead and see what's going to happen 6 months from now. You're all familiar with the rollout of the Apple Watch that was big fanfare last month. Will be available early next year. You may not be aware of just how much information it tracks about your biometrics, and all sorts of devices, whole category of devices now called wearable technology that we see rolling out. And there are already, as you may imagine, litigators out there talking about how they're going to use this in litigation. With the biometric, you call it quantified self, where it's keeping track of your physical vital signs. You can expect to see these, for example, in employment litigation, where a plaintiff will wear it in the employment situation, keep track of which people stress her out the most, or maybe even record a conversation when the boss speaks to you in a harsh manner.
And I know some people in the audience might be looking at this going, with an askew eye, but think about it from a litigator's perspective. If you've got a claim where someone's seeking damages for mental emotional distress, that's going to be an area that's going to be ripe for discovery disputes, because the side who's defending is going to say, what do you mean you're having trouble sleeping? I've got to see this watch you've been wearing, which keeps track of your sleep cycles, to see if your sleep really has been, and I'm going to request you either to produce it, certainly not destroy it, and if you don't, it's going to be in front of a judge seeking to compel. No different than social media activities.
Already, we've seen, and you can check them out on my blog, but you can see all sorts of cases that have already been decided in which this data that people are creating in social media and by their wearable devices voluntarily for entertainment, social purposes is being subpoenaed, being tracked, used exactly as Adam says. Even if it's not intentionally tracking your emotional state, it's certainly reflecting your emotional state. And what better way to put objective data on that issue than to get data like this? Now,
So what do you have here, Brian?
well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked, Lauren. This here is a device you've probably heard about called Google Glass. They actually exist. People wear them, and we're still in the early stages of devices like this. But the convenience of having the internet in your face at all times and being able to perform the functions that your smartphone does just with a glance or with a word, there's going to be a learning curve, and there's going to be some resistance. There already is, but in the long term, you can expect to see more functionality like this. And there again are already litigators working on how you use these. And you're going to groan when I say this, but there's already a firm in Arizona that has launched what it calls Glass Action for its program of giving its personal injury clients a glass headset so that they can wear it, track from a first-person video perspective what their life is like on a daily basis to document their impairment. And there's a lot to be said. Until you try it, you don't really appreciate how valuable first-person video is, and I could go into that. That's a whole different topic, but it's a uniquely powerful form of video, both for gathering evidence and for presenting evidence. And on that note, last device I want to leave you with is kind of the next step up from one of these. This is a device called the Moverio from Epson. Now, they call it Moverio. My wife calls it birth control. Let that sink in. You won't see people walking down the street with one of these because they're stereoscopic. They're meant to encase your full 360, 180 field of vision. But you can look around, and using the right apps, you feel like you're inside this virtual world, even though you can see through it and see it superimposed on your physical world or augment your reality. So for example, if you followed all the weekly trial, the Detroit officer who's been on trial twice now for shooting a young girl in Detroit. What happened during the course of that trial, there's a lot of argument about the effects of this concussive grenade that was launched in the house in that situation, and how that affects somebody's perception. And what they did twice was they put a jury inside a sealed room and detonated a concussive grenade so that they could feel what it was like. How much more efficient, and not to mention less dangerous, would it be to put one of these on each juror and let them experience in 360, let them look around and see what the setting was like? And not just physical effects like a concussive grenade, but any setting. And we see 3D recreations now in courtrooms on two-dimensional screens. It won't be long until we're asking judges to allow us to let jurors experience a three-dimensional view in 3 dimensions using a device like this. So I think that, Lauren, are we out of time?
Yeah, I think we're out of time, and we can take any questions that anybody has.
And we have our devices here too, our iPads and everything else. We're happy to chat with you after hours, after the presentation is wrapped up here, and show you any particular app or device you might be interested in.
We also have white papers for you. We've got the blog update from Shell Stark, and then I have a white paper on some of the basic considerations you want for giving a presentation of the mobile device. For those who are watching this via video, we will make sure that the FBA has copies that are available to download if you are unable to attend live. With that, we're finished. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.